This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We've kind of cobbled together a lot of the Eagles' schedule. There is one guy out there who has the full schedule. We can't confirm if that is accurate or not. There does seem to be some games on that schedule that have been confirmed. We do know the Eagles are not playing Christmas Day. That will be the Chiefs, Steelers, Ravens, and Texans. They will be the four teams that play on Christmas Day. In fact, it doesn't look like the Eagles will be playing on any holidays this year. We do have the holiday games. They have all been confirmed. Thanksgiving is Bears, Lions, Giants, Cowboys, Dolphins, Packers. Black Friday, Raiders, Chiefs. Christmas will be Chiefs, Steelers, Ravens, Texans. So no holiday games, Geoff Mosher, for the Eagles this year. Have you been trying to cobble together this schedule, or are you just going to wait until it's official tonight?
Yeah, I'm a big who cares guy as far as breaking schedule games. We know who they're playing. We know all the teams. We just don't know the order. I can wait till 8 o'clock. I don't need to go chase down, hey, are they playing the Falcons week 7 or 9?
Week 2.
Why?
It's week 2, Monday night.
I know. And by the way, is there something about Kirk Cousins against the Eagles week 2 primetime that the NFL says we must have this every year? I mean, my gosh,
he must
have woke up and said, "I know where I'm going to be week 2 and what time this year." You don't even have to show me the schedule.
Yeah. So just some of the things that are out there. Packers, we knew in Brazil. A lot of murmurs about a Monday night game at home in week 2. According to some reports, that is accurate. I was a little surprised. Falcons, Eagles, Monday night. I thought the Eagles had a lot of other options that could have been a primetime game.
Well, you say that through an Eagles lens, right? You're saying like there are better matchups because are you saying you don't think the Falcons are worthy of playing the Eagles? Because somebody in Atlanta would be like, yeah, the Eagles.
I thought the Eagles had a lot more attractive opponents that Monday night would have been, like Eagles, Bengals or Eagles. Steelers, I thought would have been more high-profile games than playing against the Falcons.
I think first of all, the Falcons are a pretty good storyline here with Kirk Cousins, and Kirk Cousins has weapons, and the whole Michael Penix thing gets thrown in there. I think the Falcons are an interesting storyline. I mean, you know what, Mike? I remember this exact same conversation you and I were having last year about the week 3 game against the Bucks. And we were at that point, we're like, what, Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask? I mean, that's really considered good football for, for the NFL. Like the Bucks have to decide between these two guys. And then lo and behold, the Bucks actually go to Baker Mayfield and they wound up being pretty good. They lost that game to the Eagles, but, beat them in the playoffs, obviously, by quite a bit. So sometimes the matchup that don't look so good in April or May becomes pretty enticing once you get to the season. And I do think the Kirk Cousins element to it, and then with Michael Penix there looking over his shoulder, I think that ends. I think it's a pretty interesting storyline.
No, listen, and Josh and I were kind of going back and forth about this the other day. I think Atlanta wins that division because they have now added Kirk Cousins. I think he's enough to get them from a 7-9 team to maybe, we're a 7-10 team to maybe a 9-8 team or a 10-7 team. And I think that, it's not like Tampa Bay is such a clear favorite there. So I do think that they will be better. I just thought that put that game on Monday night, I was a little surprised. That's all.
Aim high, NFC South. You might actually produce a champion this year that wins double-digit games. And what a step in the right direction that would be for that sack division for the last few years.
Well, speaking of the NFC South, and I bring this schedule up with you, Moshe, because this is your last time on this week. You won't get a chance to really talk to me about it. So if this is the schedule, and so far there's been a lot of hits on this schedule, they're playing the Falcons on Monday night, at the Saints and at the Buccaneers. They've got all 3 South teams back to back to back. They got the Panthers later on in the schedule, but that could get you off to a pretty good start.
Yeah, it could. It certainly could. I mean, I think the Falcons are going to be a pretty decent team. They've made a lot of additions, even outside of Kirk Cousins, the last 2 years. And you could argue that they were a quarterback away from being really formidable, and now they've got one. Buccaneers beat the Eagles pretty soundly in the playoffs. Now, I don't expect that Eagles team to show up this year, and I think the Bucs might fall back a little bit, but there's no doubt about it that the Bucs still have some talent. They lost their offensive coordinator, so you have to wonder what kind of impact that's going to have on Baker Mayfield, who played fairly well for Dave Canales, who's now the head coach for the Panthers.
Yes.
So I agree with you. It's a chance to start it off. It doesn't feel like, and again, I'm not going to go off of anybody's reported schedule, but just I don't think it's an easy schedule. It's maybe not as hard as last year, because last year you had that murderer's row of 7 straight weeks against really good teams and quarterbacks. But I would also say, just based on the opponents they're going to play, this will not be like 2 years ago when they almost had a cakewalk for almost the entire season. I mean, they may have played like 2 legit quarterbacks outside of Dak Prescott 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, what's interesting, so this year, I'm glad you brought that up. We went over the quarterbacks that they will play this year, and the high, CBS Sports put out their power rankings for the quarterbacks. The highest quarterback on that list was Joe Burrow at number 4, Lamar Jackson at number 6, Dak Prescott at number 8, Jordan Love at number 10, and Kirk Cousins at number 14. That was the top 5 quarterbacks according to those power rankings that the Eagles will face this year. A lot of times you look at what quarterbacks am I going to get stuck facing this year? Those are the 5 best on their power rankings. So the quarterback, oh my God, Mahomes, and you don't have a whole heck of a lot of Josh Allen top end guys. Just Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and the third guy is Dak Prescott. That's manageable.
Yeah, but I still see it as probably, as opposed to 2 years ago, you still have more quarterbacks this year who, on average, at some point in their career, have probably played like a top 5 quarterback and not really far removed. Because let's face it, after Mahomes, right? Mahomes is number 1, or some would say like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. Someone would say Burrow, Allen, Johnson. It could be either of that. But then you also get into a list of quarterbacks who have played very well. I mean, the Eagles are going to this year. I tend to be a Matthew Stafford guy. I think that when he's got a good environment around him, that's where he shines. And they have addressed their offensive line. The Rams have. They've made a lot of good moves this offseason. If they protect him with Puka Nacua and with a healthy Cooper Kupp, I think he can be a top 5 statistical quarterback in the league. And then, we'll see what Kirk Cousins does. He's coming back from a major injury, but he has the ability any given week to play really good high-level football. He has not played it against his career. Earlier, when he was in Washington, he had a few good games, but that's why I say there are decent quarterbacks all over the schedule who can beat the Eagles if they're not right defensively.
Well, you just said it, Moshe. There's decent guys everywhere. You have Deshaun Watson. He's a wild card. You've got Russell Wilson. He is no any longer. He was a great player at one point.
I don't know about him anymore.
Are you out on him? All right. Trevor Lawrence. Yeah. Trevor Lawrence is another guy that he could dazzle at times. You've got Derek Carr. You've got Matthew Stafford. Baker Mayfield. So it's not like this. They have guys that can pull a game out every now, but they're not consistent. Has been the problem for a lot of these guys.
Right. I to me the key is you're trying to win double-digit games. You're trying to win, as many games as you can. But can the Eagles get to at least 11 or 12? And only lose 5? Do they have games against more than 5 good quarterbacks? Well, you got 2 against Dak, you got 1 against Lamar, right? Lamar's on the schedule. Yeah, 1 against Lamar, 1 against Stafford, 1 against Burrow. So that's 5 right there. Okay, we didn't say Cousins yet, and we didn't say Trevor Lawrence. I mean, you brought him up, but I'm just throwing him in now. I mean, it's when you start to look at it that way. Now, obviously, you're not going to lose all those games. I'm just talking about just facing teams that can beat you and can give you a game, and the Steelers, it's weird. They don't play well in Philadelphia. The Eagles don't play well in Pittsburgh, but they're a tough team to beat regardless. I mean, I think there'll be a run and defensive team. Wouldn't surprise me if Justin Fields was their quarterback by sometime by week 8 or week 9, and that might change the dimension of it as well. So we'll see there.
The one thing about this schedule that I find to be tough to believe. Now, I'm not, so far there's been a lot of stuff that has been reported by a lot of people that has been accurate, but no Eagles-Cowboys in prime time. I find that one hard to believe. How about you?
You know what? I did, but then I had this conversation with Kaplan the other day, and I said, there have been so many Eagles-Cowboys games on prime time the last few years that there usually one game was earlier in the first half of the season. Wouldn't surprise me if it was back to being like the Giants or Washington kind of early on in the season. So we'll see. I mean, I know with all the reported schedules out there, it doesn't seem like they're playing a division game in their first 3 to 4 weeks, correct?
No, according to this schedule, the first division game is Week 7 against the Giants, Week 10 against the Cowboys, Week 11 on Thursday Night Football against the Commanders, and then they close the season out Week 16, 17, and 18 with the Commanders, Cowboys, and Giants. So you have 3 straight division games to close out, but only one of those games in the NFC East is a primetime game, and that's the Thursday game against the Commanders.
Yeah, so obviously they've been backloading the schedule with those division games the last few years. So the first 6 weeks don't have to worry about a division opponent. That's interesting to me, because there's usually.
And by the way, Moshe,
games we know.
And by the way, Week 5 is the bye week according to this leak.
Right, saw that. So we'll see. That's a very early bye week for them.
Very early, and different from last year. I'm sure the Inside the Birds podcast guys will like this. There are currently 6 1:00 games on this league schedule, and not a whole heck of a lot. You've got the Friday night Brazil. You've got one Monday night, one Sunday night, 2 Sunday nights, a Thursday night, and that's it. Nothing else. Everything else is either a couple of 4s in there. No holiday games, no Christmas, no Black Friday, no Thanksgiving. So it seems to be a fan-favorable schedule if this league schedule is the accurate one.
I suppose so. See, I don't know if fans like the holiday games or not. I think you and I and probably people in our industry through media lenses, right? And I am super excited whenever they don't play on the holiday because it just means I get to spend some actual time with my family on the holidays. But I know some fans who love a home Thanksgiving game or a home Christmas game, or they like to travel and go to the game, get to a new place. So, I mean, it just depends on how you view it, but you are absolutely right. Inside the Birds is ecstatic. Inside the Birds is hoping that this schedule leak turns out to be true and that there are not as many primetime games and no holiday games.
Yeah, that would be. And by the way, another quirk in this interesting part of this leaked schedule, again, not confirming this schedule. We will get that tonight at 8:00. But 4 of the last 5 games, Moshe, at home. Panthers, Steelers, at Commanders, home against Dallas and the Giants. So you get 4 of your last 5 games at home. That's a big help.
It should be, Mike. Theoretically, it should be, yes.
Yeah, well, theoretically, you're right. But again, you would rather play those 4 out of the last 5 at home than say, hey, 4 out of if I said, Moshe, 4 out of the last 5 are on the road, you would say, that's a challenge.
True. Well, it depends on who. I mean, for whatever reason, right, the Cowboys seem to play very well at the Link, whereas the Eagles seem to play well in Dallas. So it's always kind of a weird dynamic there.
Yeah, Dallas, by the way, separated by 7 weeks, Week 10 and Week 17. The Commanders are separated by 5 weeks, Week 11 and week number 16. The Giants are a little further. They're about 10 weeks apart. You got Week 7 and Week 18 for the Giants there. One of the other, we told you about the bye there. Coming out of that bye will be a Cleveland 1:00 game at home. So a very good, the way that it sets up with not a lot of primetime games, back to the 1:00s. It's a more fan-friendly schedule, Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast here from Football at 4. The other thing I guess you could take a look at is they didn't get any of the, as we mentioned, the holiday games, the Black Friday game, nothing like that. So as we said, that's good. So it looks like a pretty good navigatable schedule. So I would ask you, if there was one, I guess you didn't really see this yet, but if there was one pocket, I would tell you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You've got that Bengals, Jaguars, Cowboys. That seemingly is the toughest stretch in that little 3-game stretch. Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott, I think would be the toughest 3-game stretch you're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, this is tough because of you just not knowing, right? Certain things. Like, for example, I think you mentioned this on the show, Mike. I don't know what kind of team Washington's going to be because of the new quarterback. And as we saw last year with C.J. Stroud, maybe the quarterback's really good and becomes a good player, and then all of a sudden you start to look at the schedule and say, well, hey, is that team better than I thought? And so they're at the end of the year. It would be Steelers, Commanders, Cowboys. Does that become a little bit of a murderer's row there at the end of the year? I don't know. People think the Steelers are going to stink. I'm out on Russ, but I'm not out on the Steelers because they always figure out a way to be competitive and in the playoffs. Or you look at the Bengals, Jaguars, Cowboys, Commanders, Rams, Ravens. That's 6 straight games right there. If the Commanders are a lot better because Jaden Daniels, let's remember, everybody's talking about Caleb Williams walking into Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, right, and Cole Kmet and a pretty good offense. Jaden Daniels is getting Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson. That you could do a whole lot worse than that. That's a Pro Bowl receiver and a first-round pick who's probably going to be a good player if they can ever get a good quarterback, right? And they did add to their offensive line with some proven talent. So if this kid's a good player and Washington's even a 10 or an 8 to 10 win team, I know that sounds crazy, but if it is, that makes that part of the schedule that much rougher, does it not?
It does. No question. You're right about if Jaden Daniels turns into C.J. Stroud and he turns into, turns that Washington team into what? Look, because if we were having this conversation last year about Houston, we wouldn't have any expectations for that team. And now that Houston team is playing on Christmas Day against the Ravens. The Chiefs, by the way, Moshe, they've got a brutal schedule this year. Just Christmas, Black Friday, the opening night, they play Baltimore. The second week, they play Cincinnati. They got to go on the road to San Francisco. Black Friday, Christmas. The Chiefs, they're going to have a tough way to navigate their way through that schedule, but that comes with being the Super Bowl champs.
I was going to say, I'll play the world's smallest violin for the Chiefs. And I'm sure I'm sure they're going to be okay. I'm sure they'll get over it.
No doubt. All right.
Let me ask you this real quick though, before we wrap this up. I thought you guys were having a really good discussion on Jared Goff and Kirk Cousins and who's better, or is Jared Goff like just a little bit younger version of Kirk Cousins? Really good conversation. I think we all agree that these guys have played at times when the environment is around them like high-level quarterbacks, but there are also times where you're like, yeah, I'm not that afraid of the guy. But I wanted to ask you that, who would you right now, Mike Gill, say should be considered the favorite to win the NFC going into this 2024 season?
That's a good one, man. You got Green Bay, you've got San Francisco, and you've got Detroit, I think would be the top 3 choices. And then you got Philadelphia, you got Dallas.
Yeah.
Those would probably be your top 5, right?
Obviously San Francisco is, until somebody beats them, right? I mean, they don't really lose too much, and they're going to get Hufanga back. They're all pro safety. But I think people sleep on the Lions. I think they may have the best 53 in the NFC.
Well, we were talking about this. We were talking about this last week, Moshe. CBS Sports did their post-draft power rankings. They were number 4. I said, we're living in a world right now where the Detroit Lions are the 4th best team this league has to offer. I don't know if that's a world I want to be living in, but that's where we are right now.
It's a scary world, Mike.
Right?
The Detroit Lions are legit. They've won a playoff game at home last year, right? Or even a playoff game for the first time in the longest time. But, yeah, I mean, if you look at their 53, I know they did lose one of their guards, right, in free agency to the Rams, I think, by the way, who I think the Rams are another team that people look at and don't give enough credit to as a legit contender. But, yeah, I think that the Detroit Lions are a really good team.
No, I totally agree. I have no problem with that. And I loved Arnold. They got Rakestraw, so they got 2 new corners back there. That was an area that they needed some help. All right, Geoff Mosher, the schedule will be out tonight, but we have a bunch of leaks or reported leaks. These are not gospel yet. So listen tonight, 8 o'clock. They'll have the full schedule release, and then we'll talk about it with Andrew and Adam. And Moshe will be back on Monday, and a lot more Eagles. And, of course, when Monday is back, the Eagles will be at OTAs. They will be back for their OTAs workouts on Monday, on Wednesday, on Thursday. Next week, the Eagles will be at OTAs, and we'll have it all for you here on Football at 4. And the guys from the Inside the Birds podcast, I'm sure, will be talking more about it. Geoff, thanks, buddy.
See you, Mike. Take care.
All right, Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. And, of course, you can get that on all podcasting platforms. Just search Inside the Birds.